I stood outside the mahogany door of my father's study, watching the gold handle catch the hallway light while voices rose and fell on the other side. They were voting on the foundation. My foundation. The one I'd built from nothing over 6 years of sleepless nights and careful negotiations. The one that bore our family name but had been my dream since I was 16, standing in a refugee camp with my mother, watching her distribute blankets with hands that never stopped shaking. I pressed my palm against the wood. It was cool, polished, expensive. Everything in the Ashford house was expensive. My sister Vivian had chosen this door herself when they renovated, said the grain reminded her of autumn in Vermont. I'd been in Milan that week, securing partnerships with 3 hospitals. No one had asked my opinion about doors. The foundation needs fresh direction. My father's voice carried through, measured and final. Vivian has presented a comprehensive restructuring plan. My breath caught. Restructuring. That's what they called it when they wanted to erase you. Camilla's approach has been too cautious, Vivian said, her voice smooth as silk over steel. We're sitting on resources we could be leveraging. The Luxembourg project alone could triple our impact if we partnered with the Castellano Group. The Castellano Group. I turned them down 8 months ago after discovering their money came from medical supply contracts in conflict zones, marking up insulin and antibiotics by 300%. I documented everything, presented it to the board. My father had nodded, said I'd made the right call. Apparently that had an expiration date. Camilla's always been conservative, my mother added, quieter but no less cutting. Ever since she was young. Remember when Vivian wanted to go to that charity gala in Paris and Camilla insisted they stay home and study? She's never understood how to balance principle with pragmatism. I had been 17. Vivian had been 19 and failing 3 classes. The gala had been the night before her final exams. I'd offered to help her study. She'd gone to Paris anyway, failed out, and somehow I'd become the villain of that story. Let's put it to a vote, my father said. All in favour of appointing Vivian as the new director of the Ashford Foundation, with full operational control? I waited. Someone would object. My brother Daniel, maybe. He'd helped me set up our clinic in Kenya. Or Aunt Catherine, who'd praised my work at last year's donor dinner, told me I had my grandmother's heart. I, my father said. I, my mother echoed. I. Vivian, of course. I. Daniel's voice hit differently. Surprised me. I'd just gotten him a fellowship at Johns Hopkins. I. Aunt Catherine, apparently I'd misremembered her praise. One by one, they voted me out of my own life's work. No discussion. No chance to defend myself. They hadn't even told me there would be a vote today. I'd only found out because I'd come home early from a site visit to Tanzania, walked in on them gathering in my father's study, and been told to wait outside while they handled foundation business. Foundation business. My business. The work I'd poured myself into while they attended galas and networking dinners, while they smiled for cameras and gave interviews about family legacy that I'd actually built. I should have left then. But some stupid, childish part of me had believed they'd call me in. Ask my perspective. Remember that I'd built this from the ground up, that every partnership, every donor relationship, every successful project had my fingerprints all over it. The door opened. I stepped back. My father emerged first, already loosening his tie, ready to move on with his evening. He saw me and paused, something flickering across his face. Pity, maybe, or just inconvenience. Camilla, he said, we've made some decisions about the Foundation's future. I heard. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Through the door. You should have been in Brussels. His tone suggested this was somehow my fault for being present. Vivian mentioned you'd extended your return. I came back early to prepare the quarterly report. It's due Monday. Vivian will handle that now. He moved past me toward the stairs. She's taking over as director, effective immediately. We'll announce it at the gala next week. The gala. The one I'd been planning for 11 months. The one where we were supposed to unveil the new paediatric wing in Nairobi, funded by donations I'd personally secured from 23 different families. I'd spent weeks crafting each pitch, understanding what mattered to each donor, building relationships that went beyond money. Vivienne emerged next, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She'd worn her Chanel suit, the burgundy one that photographed well. She'd known this was happening, had probably spent the morning planning what to wear for her victory. "Miller," she said, using the nickname she knew I hated. "Don't take this personally. It's just business." Business. She turned my life into a business decision. "The Castellano deal," I said. "You're going to take it." "Of course," she smiled. "It's a good opportunity. They're war profiteers. They're investors with capital." She adjusted her purse on her shoulder. "You've always been so black and white. The world doesn't work that way." "The world works exactly that way," I said. "You just prefer not to see it." Her smile tightened. "This is why Dad chose me. You're too rigid, too idealistic. The foundation needs someone who can make practical decisions." "Practical," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" My mother appeared in the doorway, saw us, and looked away. Just looked away. Like I was something embarrassing she'd rather not acknowledge. Like my presence was an inconvenience in her perfectly managed life. Daniel came out last, couldn't meet my eyes. "Cam, it's not personal. We all agreed, You all agreed," I said, without me, about my work. "It's the family's work," he said. "The family's foundation. I built it. We funded it. Money. That's all it came down to. They'd given money, so they owned everything. My time, my effort, my relationships, my vision. None of that mattered against their checkbook." I walked. Out of the hallway, down the stairs, through the foyer with its crystal chandelier and fresh flowers that someone changed every 3 days. I walked past the family photos on the wall, 20 years of carefully curated moments where Vivienne always stood in the centre, where I was always slightly to the side, slightly out of focus, like even the photographer understood my place in this family. I walked to my car, got in, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. Away was enough. The city blurred past. Streetlights, storefronts, people living their normal lives. I envied them. Their ordinary problems, their uncomplicated families, their simple betrayals that probably hurt less than this. My phone buzzed. Text from Daniel. "Dad wanted me to tell you they'll need your files by end of week. Password access to all foundation accounts. Clean handover. Clean. Like I was a stain they needed to remove." Another text. "Also, the donor files. Vivienne wants to review all the relationships. The relationships I'd built, the trust I'd earned. She wanted to review them like they were assets in a portfolio." I pulled over on a bridge I didn't recognise, somewhere outside the city where the lights thinned out and the sky opened up. I sat there for a long time watching the river below, dark and quiet and final. 6 years. I'd given them 6 years. Missed my college graduation because I was in Guatemala after the earthquake. Missed my 25th birthday in a malaria clinic in Uganda. Turned down a relationship with someone I'd loved because the foundation needed me in 3 different countries in 4 months, and he needed me in New York. His name was James. He'd been patient for 2 years. Understanding when I missed dinners, cancelled trips, chose work over him again and again. But everyone has a limit. He'd reached his on a Tuesday in March, standing in my apartment with resignation in his eyes. "I love you," he'd said, "but I can't compete with ghosts." "They're not ghosts. They're real people who need real help." "And what about what I need?" I hadn't had an answer. The foundation had a crisis in South Sudan. children dying from preventable diseases. How could I choose dinner dates over that? He'd left. I'd gone to South Sudan, saved 17 children, lost the man I loved. And now the family I'd sacrificed everything for had voted me out while I stood in the hallway. I thought about the water. How quiet it would be. How easy to just stop fighting, stop trying, stop pretending any of this mattered. The bridge was empty. No one would know until morning. By then, I'd just be another tragedy, another person who couldn't handle the pressure. My family would mourn publicly, briefly, then move on with their perfect lives. I reached for the door handle. My hand was steady. Everything in me was calm. This was the right choice, the only choice. What was the point of continuing? They'd taken everything that mattered. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. Email from Dr. Omondi in Kenya. Subject line: Amara walked today. I opened it. There was a video. A little girl, 7 years old, taking her first steps after surgery we'd funded. She was laughing, her mother crying beside her. Dr. Omondi had written, "Because of you. Because you didn't give up. Because you fought for funding when everyone said it was too expensive. Because you believed in impossible things. Thank you, Camilla, thank you for giving this family their miracle." I watched it 3 times. Watched Amara's face light up with joy. Watched her take those wobbly, determined steps. Watched her mother's hands cover her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Then I put my phone down, pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, and cried. Not quiet tears. The ugly kind. The kind that come from somewhere deep and broken. The kind that tear through you and leave you empty. When I was done, I was hollow. But something in that hollow space was different. Clear. I had built something real, something that mattered, and whether my family recognized it or not didn't change the fact that it existed, that Amara was walking, that 17 children in South Sudan were alive, that families in Guatemala had shelter and families in Uganda had medicine. That had value, even if the Ashfords couldn't see it. I started the car and drove home, not to my family's house, to my apartment, the small 1-bedroom I kept in the city, the one I rarely used because I was always travelling, the one that was mine. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table and went through everything. Every file, every contact, every piece of work I'd built. The donor database I'd created from scratch, the partnership agreements I'd negotiated, the project proposals I'd written at 3 a.m, fueled by coffee and conviction. All of it was technically the foundation's property. But the relationships, the trust, the goodwill, those were mine. Built on my integrity, my follow-through, my genuine care for the work. Vivian could have the files, but she couldn't have what made them matter. By morning, I had a plan. I would give them what they wanted. I would hand over the foundation files, smile at the gala, and let Vivian have her moment. And then I would disappear. Not dramatically, not with bridges and rivers and permanent solutions. Just quietly, completely out of their lives. I had money I'd saved. Not much, but enough. I'd lived simply, spent most of my salary on supplementing foundation projects that were underfunded. I had contacts in 40 countries who knew my work, not my name. I could start over somewhere they'd never think to look. I began packing that afternoon. Not everything, just what mattered. My grandmother's journals, she'd been a nurse in World War II, had written about helping people when the world was ending. My medical supplies from fieldwork. Clothes that were practical instead of pretty. Books that had shaped my thinking. I left behind everything they'd given me. The designer clothes my mother insisted I wear to donor dinners. The jewellery for galas. The expensive handbag that cost more than a month's worth of medicine in Uganda. None of it was mine, not really, just props in their performance of family. The gala was Friday. I put on a black dress, simple and forgettable. I arrived exactly on time, smiled at exactly the right people, and said exactly nothing of substance. Vivian gave a speech about vision and innovation. She talked about taking the foundation to the next level, about strategic partnerships and maximizing impact. Buzzwords, empty phrases. She'd memorized them well, but understood nothing. My father introduced her as the new heart of the Ashford Foundation. My mother beamed in the front row, dabbing at her eyes like she was watching something beautiful instead of a hostile takeover. I stood in the back and watched donors I'd cultivated for years applaud politely. Some of them caught my eye, confusion, questions, but they were too polite to ask. Mrs. Henderson, who'd funded the Nairobi paediatric wing because I'd spent 3 months visiting her every week after her husband died, talking to her about his love of medicine and his hope that their wealth would help children. She looked at me with concern. I smiled, nodded. Everything's fine. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. I slipped out during dessert. No one noticed. I'd perfected the art of being invisible in this family. By Sunday, I was gone. I didn't leave a note, didn't tell anyone where I was going, just ceased to exist in their world as cleanly as they'd erased me from mine. I went to Kerala first, a small clinic that needed help setting up their record system. Then Bangladesh, where they needed someone to train village health workers. Cambodia, where they needed grant writing support. I took consulting projects under a different name, Elena Ross. Simple, generic, forgettable, the kind of name that didn't carry baggage or expectations. I helped set up clinics, train staff, secure funding from sources that actually cared about ethics. I worked with organisations that measured success in lives improved, not press releases generated. And slowly, painfully, I rebuilt myself. Not the Camilla who'd stood outside that door. Not the daughter who'd believed family meant belonging. Not the girl who'd thought sacrifice would earn love. Someone new, someone stronger, someone who chose herself. Months passed, then a year. I didn't contact anyone from before, deleted my old email, changed my number, let myself become someone new. When colleagues asked about my background, I gave them the basics. Grew up on the East Coast, studied international development, always wanted to help. No one pressed for details. In this work, people understood that everyone had their reasons for being here. Some were running from something, some were running towards something, most were both. I was both. And then I died. It was stupid, really. A routine visit to a village clinic in northern Thailand. Monsoon season, roads washed out. We took a shortcut through the hills. The driver was experienced, careful, but the mud was unpredictable. I remember the truck sliding, the way time stretched and compressed simultaneously. The moment when I understood what was happening, that calm certainty that this was it. The moment of impact, sharp and total. Pain, darkness, nothing. Then, everything. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd chosen when I was 14. Pink curtains. I'd hated them even then, but my mother had said they were age-appropriate, and that had been that. I sat up slowly. My hands were smaller. My body felt different, lighter, undefined. The way you feel at 17 when you're still growing into yourself. The clock on my nightstand read 7:47 a.m. The date display said May 19th. 10 years ago, I was 17 again. The realization came slowly, then all at once. I stood carefully, crossed to the mirror. My face looked back at me younger, unformed, still soft with teenage uncertainty. But my eyes were different, older, knowing. I remembered everything, every moment, every betrayal, every choice that had led me to that bridge, to that decision to disappear, to that truck in Thailand. And I remembered dying. The door burst open. Vivian, 19, and effortlessly beautiful, even in pajamas, leaned against the frame. "Mum says breakfast is ready," she announced, "and you need to help me study for finals. I'm totally bombing physics." In my first life, I'd spent the entire day helping her, made flashcards, explained concepts 15 different ways, even took her practice test for her when she claimed she was too stressed. She'd absorbed nothing, complained the whole time, then accused me of not explaining well enough when she failed anyway. Then she'd gone to Paris. "Can't," I said. "I have plans." She blinked. "What plans? You never have plans." "I do now." The words felt powerful, different. In my first life, I'd been apologetic when I said no, like I needed permission to have my own time. Now I just said it. Simple, final. I walked past her, down the stairs. The house smelled like my mother's lavender perfume and coffee. Normal, ordinary. A Sunday morning in the Ashford house before everything broke. My father sat at the table reading the financial section. My mother was at the counter, slicing fruit with practiced precision. Daniel was still in college, wouldn't be home until Christmas. "Morning, sweetheart," my mother said without looking up. "Vivian said you're helping her study?" "No," I said. "I'm going out." My father lowered his paper. "Out where?" "The refugee centre downtown. They need volunteers." Silence. My mother's knife paused mid-slice. "That's nice," she said carefully, "but Vivian's finals are important." "So, is this Camilla?" My father's tone carried warning. "Your sister needs help." "Then you help her." The words hung in the air. Shocking. I'd never spoken to my father like this. His face reddened. "Excuse me?" "I said you help her, or Mum, or she can study herself. I have other plans." I poured coffee, added cream exactly how I liked it. I'd forgotten how much I missed good coffee, the kind that wasn't instant powder mixed with questionable water, and left. Behind me, I heard Vivian's voice rise, indignant. "You're just going to let her leave?" My mother's response, "William, you need to talk to her. This attitude..." My father, "Let her go. She'll come back when she's ready to apologise." I didn't come back until dinner, and I didn't apologise. The refugee centre was exactly where I remembered it, tucked between a laundromat and a bodega on the east side. The same peeling paint, the same worn furniture, the same exhausted volunteers doing work that mattered. I volunteered there every Sunday for the next 6 months. I helped families fill out paperwork, watched kids while parents navigated legal systems, learned languages I'd need later. Arabic, Somali, Swahili. I met Mrs. Patel, who ran the centre. In my first life, I hadn't met her until I was 24, at a conference in Geneva. By then, she'd been semi-retired, handing over operations to younger activists. Now, she was in her prime. Sharp, tireless, uncompromising. "You're different from most volunteers," she said after my 3rd week. "Most kids your age come once, maybe twice, take photos for college applications. You keep showing up." "I like the work." "It's not about liking it. It's about believing it matters." "Then I believe it matters." She studied me. Why? I thought about telling her the truth. That I'd lived this already, that I knew what happened when you stopped believing things mattered, when you let other people define your worth, when you stood outside doors waiting for permission to exist. "Because someone has to," I said instead. She nodded. Good answer. I stopped helping Vivian, not cruelly, just completely. When she asked, I said no. When my parents pushed, I stayed quiet. "This rebellion phase is getting old," my mother said one night at dinner. "You're being selfish." "I'm being busy." "With what? That refugee centre?" She said it like it was embarrassing. "Camilla, that's nice for your college applications, but Vivian needs actual support. Vivian is 19. She can support herself. Don't be difficult. I looked at her. Really looked. Saw the woman who would stand in that study 10 years from now and vote me out of my own life. The woman who would look away in the hallway like I was something shameful. I'm not being difficult, I said. I'm being clear. Vivian's education is not my responsibility. My father slammed his hand on the table. You will not speak to your mother that way. I wasn't speaking to her anyway. I was stating a fact. Go to your room. I was 17. He could still send me to my room, but I wouldn't be 17 forever. I went. Vivian failed her finals, moved back home, started working at my father's company in brand management, which meant she attended events and looked beautiful and made no actual decisions. My parents were distraught. How could this have happened? What went wrong? They never once considered that maybe enabling her had been the problem, that doing everything for her had taught her to do nothing for herself. I focused on school, graduated top of my class, got into Harvard on my own merit, not my name. Studied international development and public health. I chose my classes carefully. Everything I wished I'd known in my first life. Non-profit management, grant writing, medical ethics, languages. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. I'd learned that lesson with James. Some hearts don't heal enough to trust again, not fully. But I had friends, real ones. People who liked me for who I was, not what I could do for them. My parents barely noticed. They were too busy managing Vivian's life, fixing her mistakes, smoothing over her errors. She had gotten engaged to someone wealthy and empty. His name was Preston. Old money, no substance. He treated her like an ornament. Don't you think he's wonderful? She asked me once, home for Christmas break. I think you should ask yourself if you're happy. Of course I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be? Because you just asked me if I thought he was wonderful instead of telling me you think he's wonderful. Her smile froze. You're being weird again. Probably. I left the conversation. It wasn't my job to save her from herself. I went to Kenya during winter break my freshman year. Worked with Dr. Omondi, who didn't know me yet but would. Helped set up the clinic that would later save Amara's life. He was younger than I remembered, more idealistic, less worn down. He still believed money would follow good work, that donors would see the need and respond. I knew better. I'd lived it. You need a sustainable funding model, I told him. Diversified income streams, individual donors, corporate partnerships, government grants. Don't rely on any single source. He laughed. You sound like a consultant. I'm a student. A student who talks like she's done this before. I've studied it, I said, which was true, just not in the way he thought. I helped him build a donor database, showed him how to track relationships, follow up consistently, build trust over time. The same systems I'd used in my first life. When I left, he hugged me. You'll do great things, Camilla. So will you. I came home for Christmas. The house was full of people I didn't care about, discussing things that didn't matter. Vivian's wedding plans, Daniel's career trajectory, my father's latest acquisition. No one asked about Kenya. No one asked about my work. I was just Camilla, the serious one, the boring one, the one who didn't understand how to have fun. Fine, let them think that. Vivian cornered me by the dessert table. She was 27 now, beautiful and brittle, engaged to someone wealthy and empty. You've changed, she said, not kindly. Have I? You used to care. About family. About helping. I still care. Just not about the same things. What's that supposed to mean? I looked at her. Really looked. saw the insecurity she masked with designer clothes, the emptiness she filled with attention, the way she needed to win because she'd never learned to build. I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just distance. "It means I hope you're happy," I said. I meant it. Whatever happened to her now was her own making. I tried to help her once, spent years trying. It hadn't mattered then. It wouldn't matter now. "You're being cryptic again." "I'm being honest." She studied me, trying to find an angle. "Are you jealous? Is that what this is?" "Of what?" "My wedding. Preston. The life I'm building." I could have laughed. Instead, I just smiled. "Vivian, I genuinely hope you get everything you deserve." The ambiguity of that statement escaped her. She smiled back, satisfied. "Thank you. That's actually really sweet." I left the party early, drove back to campus, back to my real life. I left Harvard with honours. Turned down 6 consulting offers in New York. High salaries, prestigious firms, everything my father had always said I should want, to take a position with Doctors Without Borders. My father called me into his study, the same study where, in another life, he would vote me out. "This is a mistake," he said. "You're throwing away your potential." "I'm using it?" "For what? To play nurse in countries that don't matter. They matter to the people who live there." "Don't be naive. You could be making real money, building real influence. I don't want your version of real." His face hardened. "You're making a choice here, Camilla. Walk away from this opportunity and don't expect our support." "I've never had your support," I said. "Just your expectations. There's a difference." I left, took the position, spent 3 years in places my family couldn't pronounce, doing work they couldn't understand. I built something real. Connections, knowledge, impact. Everything I'd built before, but this time with no one to take it from me. The work was hard, devastating sometimes. I saw children die from preventable diseases, saw families destroyed by conflicts they didn't start, saw the worst of humanity and the best, often in the same day. But it mattered. Every life we saved mattered. Every family we helped mattered. And I was good at it. Better than I'd been in my first life, because I knew what worked. I knew how to build systems that lasted. I knew which donors to approach and which to avoid. I knew the difference between help that empowered and help that created dependency. I was 27 when my father called. "We're establishing a foundation," he said. "Family legacy project. Your mother and I want you involved." I was in Jordan, watching sunset over Petra. The sky was purple and gold, and absolutely indifferent to family politics. "I'm not interested," I said. "Camilla." He used his disappointed voice, the one that used to make me crumble. "This is important." "To who?" Silence. He wasn't used to being questioned. "To the family," he said finally. "Then let the family handle it. You have experience that you've never valued. That's not fair." Fair would have been including me in decisions about my own work. Fair would have been calling me into the room instead of making me wait outside. Fair would have been believing me when I warned you about bad partnerships. I paused. "But we're not talking about that timeline, are we? In this timeline, you just want to use my expertise without acknowledging its value." "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know, that's the problem." I hung up. He called back twice. I didn't answer. My mother tried next, left a voicemail about duty and legacy and how much they'd sacrificed for us. I listened to the whole thing this time. Heard the entitlement in every word, the assumption that their money meant ownership of our lives. I deleted it. Vivian sent an email. Long, rambling, guilt-soaked. How could I abandon them? How could I be so selfish? Didn't I understand what family meant? I wrote back this time. Just one line. I understand exactly what family means. That's why I'm saying no. She didn't respond. They established the foundation without me, named it Ashford Legacy. Vivian became director, of course she did. My father funded it. My mother managed the social aspects. I heard about it through colleagues, heard about their partnership with the Castellano Group, heard about the press releases promising revolutionary change. I heard about the scandals 2 years later when investigative journalists uncovered the supply chain issues, the marked up medications, the profiteering in conflict zones, everything I'd warned them about in another life. The foundation collapsed. My father paid settlements. Vivian resigned in disgrace. I was in Morocco when the news broke. Someone forwarded me the article with a note. Wasn't this your family's foundation? I read it once, then went back to work. There was satisfaction in it, I won't lie, not joy. I didn't celebrate their failure, but satisfaction in knowing I'd been right. In knowing that my principles had been correct, my instincts sound. They had chosen money and prestige over ethics. They'd suffered the consequences. That was justice. Quiet, inevitable justice. Years passed. I moved through the world quietly, building clinics, training staff, helping people who'd never heard of the Ashfords and didn't care. I turned 30, then 35. Time moved differently in this life, faster in some ways, slower in others. I was 38 when I met James again. Not my James. This timeline's James. He was working for an NGO in Somalia, managing supply logistics. We were introduced at a coordination meeting. "Camilla," he said, shaking my hand, "I have heard about your work. Impressive." He didn't recognize me. How could he? In this timeline, we'd never met, never fallen in love, never broken each other's hearts. "Thank you," I said. We worked together for 6 months. He was brilliant, dedicated, exactly as I remembered. And I felt nothing, not because the feeling had died, but because it had never been born. This wasn't my James, just someone who looked like him, sounded like him, had his mannerisms and his laugh. But the history wasn't there. The foundation was missing. I understood then what I'd given up. By changing my timeline, I'd lost the possibility of him, of us. It was the right choice. I'd choose it again, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. He asked me to dinner once, professional, collegial. I said yes. We talked about work, about the challenges of humanitarian aid in conflict zones, about the balance between immediate relief and sustainable development. It was a good conversation. Easy, intelligent, and completely hollow. "I should go," I said when dinner ended. "Of course. Early meeting?" "Something like that." I never pursued it, never let it become more. Some ghosts were meant to stay ghosts. I was 43 when I received the invitation. A medical conference in New York. They wanted me to speak about field hospital systems in crisis zones. I almost declined, but the venue was Columbia Presbyterian, where Dr. Ramondi was doing a fellowship. I hadn't seen him in person for 2 years. I went. The conference was exactly what I expected. Academics and administrators, too much theory, not enough practice. I gave my talk, answered questions, and slipped away during the reception. I found Dr. Ramondi in the research wing, reviewing patient charts. "Eleanor," he said, using the name I'd kept. He'd never asked why I'd changed it. Just accepted it, the way he accepted most things. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it." We talked about Amara. She was 20 now, in medical school. Top of her class. Wanted to specialise in orthopaedic surgery. "Because of you," Dr. Ramondi said. "Because you didn't give up on her. You funded it. You made it possible." I shrugged. "Money's just money. You did the work." We both did the work. that's why it mattered. We were walking back through the hospital corridor when I saw them. My family, all of them. My father in his expensive suit, older now, moving more carefully. My mother clutching her designer bag, her hair more grey than I remembered. Vivienne, older now, thinner, harder around the edges. Daniel, who I barely recognised, successful in whatever he'd chosen. They were visiting someone. A patient, maybe. Someone important enough to warrant a family visit. They didn't see me. I'd changed enough. Different hair, different clothes, different life in my eyes. But more than that, they weren't looking. People like them never looked at people like me. The workers, the helpers, the ones who built instead of owned. I watched them pause at a directory, arguing quietly about which floor. My mother looked tired. My father looked old. Vivienne looked lost. Daniel glanced my direction. For a moment, I thought he recognised me. His eyes caught mine, held. Something flickered there. Confusion, maybe, or recognition. Then he looked away. I kept walking. Dr. Ramondi noticed. Old acquaintances? Old life, I said. Do you miss it? I thought about that, about the girl who'd stood outside the study door, waiting for them to choose her, about the woman who'd built a foundation they'd stolen, about the person I'd been when I believed family meant belonging. No, I said, I miss who I thought they were, but I don't miss them. We reached the exit. Outside, the city was loud and bright and indifferent. New York in autumn, my favourite time of year. Coffee? Dr. Ormondi asked. Coffee, I agreed. We walked into the evening, talking about the next clinic, the next project, the next life we might save. Behind me, my family navigated their complicated emotions in air-conditioned hallways, probably discussing whatever crisis had brought them together, probably not thinking about the daughter and sister who'd disappeared from their lives. I didn't look back, not because I was bitter, but because there was nothing behind me worth seeing. 3 months later, I received a letter. Physical mail forwarded through 7 addresses before it found me in Bangladesh, where I was training midwives in a rural clinic. My mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away unread. But curiosity won. I opened it. Camilla, I don't know if this will reach you. I don't know if you'll read it. But I need to try. Your father had a stroke. He's recovering, but it's changed things. Made us think about time, about choices, about what matters. We've been looking for you for years. Hired investigators, called everyone we could think of. You disappeared so completely, like you never existed. Vivienne told us what happened. The vote, the foundation. She said you were outside the door. I don't remember it that way, but she's probably right. She usually is about these things. We made mistakes. I made mistakes. I saw what I wanted to see, believed what was easier to believe. Vivienne needed so much help, and you never seemed to need anything. You were always so capable, so independent. That's not an excuse, just an explanation. If you get this, please come home, even just to talk. Your father asks about you, wants to see you, wants to apologise. We all do. Mum. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, put it in my desk drawer, and went back to work. I didn't respond. The thing about apologies is they require audience. They require the person who was hurt to witness the regret, to validate the growth, to grant forgiveness. I wasn't interested in being anyone's audience. They wanted to apologise because it would make them feel better. Because my father's stroke had reminded them of mortality, and they wanted to clear their conscience before death. But their conscience wasn't my responsibility. 2 weeks later, another letter. This one from Vivienne. Miller, Mum said she wrote you. I don't know if you got it. I don't know if you're reading this. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I took everything from you. That foundation, the respect, the family. I knew what I was doing. I told myself it was business, but it wasn't. It was jealousy. You were always better than me. Smarter, kinder, more genuine. Everyone could see it except Mum and Dad. Or maybe they could see it, and that's why they protected me more. Because you didn't need protecting. But that's not fair, is it? Everyone needs something. The foundation failed. You probably heard. We partnered with people you'd warned us about, made decisions you would have questioned. Everything fell apart exactly the way you said it would. Dad lost a lot of money. More than that, he lost credibility. The Ashford name means something different now. I see it when I meet people, the way they look at us. Polite but distant, like we're tainted. You were right about everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know. I'm sorry for taking your work. I'm sorry for taking your place. I'm sorry for being too weak to build my own life instead of stealing yours. If you come home, I'll be gone. I've moved to Portland, starting over, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not being whoever they need me to be. Take care of yourself. V, I read this one once, then I burned it. Not out of anger, just closure. Apologies don't erase actions. Understanding doesn't undo harm. Regret doesn't restore what was taken. They were sorry. Fine, that was their journey. But my journey didn't require their participation. I stayed where I was, kept building what mattered. Years folded into each other. I turned 45 in Tanzania, 50 in Cambodia, 55 in Jordan. Time moved forward. I moved with it. Dr. Omondi retired at 68, handed his clinic over to Amara. She ran it brilliantly, expanded it into 3 countries, trained hundreds of doctors. She married a teacher, had 2 children, lived a life of purpose and joy. You remind me of someone, I told her once, visiting the clinic on its 20th anniversary. Who? Someone I used to be. She laughed. That doesn't make sense. It does if you've lived twice. She didn't ask what I meant, just squeezed my hand and went back to work. Smart woman. Knew when to leave mysteries alone. I received one final letter when I was 58, years after the others. My father had died. The funeral was private. They'd respected his wishes to keep it small. Daniel wrote it. Simple, factual, empty of pressure. I thought you should know, not because you need to come, but because you deserve to be told. Dad asked about you at the end, wanted to know if we'd found you. We told him we hadn't. He said, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her she was right." I don't know if that matters to you, but I'm passing it on. Take care, Camilla. Daniel. I read it standing in my kitchen in Portugal. I'd bought a small house there, overlooking the ocean. Retired from field work, but still consulting remotely. I thought about my father, about the man who'd once lifted me onto his shoulders at the zoo, told me I could do anything, about the man who'd voted me out of my life's work without calling me into the room. Both were true. People are complicated. Love is complicated. I folded the letter carefully, put it with the others in a box I kept in the closet, the box of things I'd left behind. Then I went back to my life. I worked another 10 years, saw Amara's clinic expand across East Africa, trained hundreds of medical workers, helped thousands of patients who never knew my real name and didn't need to. I retired completely at 68, spent my days reading, gardening, walking on the beach. Sometimes I volunteered at the local clinic, not because I needed to, because I wanted to. One morning, I was at the market when I heard my name. Camilla Ashford. I turned, an older woman, elegant in that effortless European way, silver hair, expensive clothes worn casually. "I'm sorry," I said. "You must have me confused with someone else." No, she smiled. I'd recognise you anywhere. I'm Catherine Morris, your aunt. Aunt Catherine, the one who'd voted with them. We were both old now. Time had done its work. I'm Elena Ross, I said. Of course. Her smile didn't fade. Eleanor, then? Do you have time for coffee? I should have said no, should have walked away. But I was curious, and old enough not to care if curiosity killed me. We sat at a cafe overlooking the water. She ordered espresso. I ordered tea. You look well, she said. I am. Happy? Yes. She nodded slowly. Good. That's good. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she spoke again. I voted with them that day, in the study. I know. I regretted it, immediately. But by the time I said something, you were gone. Would it have mattered? She considered this. Probably not, but I should have tried. Why didn't you? Because it was easier not to. Because standing up to your father meant risking his disapproval, and I was too old to want that battle. She stirred her espresso. Cowardice, dressed up as pragmatism. I said nothing. They looked for you, she continued. How? For years. Your mother especially. She never forgave herself. She shouldn't have needed to look. She should have called me into the room. You're right. Catherine met my eyes. You were always right. That was part of the problem. You made it look so easy, being good, being principled. We forgot that it wasn't easy for you either, that you were making sacrifices we couldn't see. I wasn't asking for credit. I know, you were just asking to be included. The words hung between us, true and terrible. I'm glad you found this, Catherine said finally, gesturing at the ocean, the market, the life I'd built. I'm glad you got free. Thank you. Do you ever think about coming back? No. Not even... No. She nodded, understood. Your mother died last year. Pneumonia. It was quick. I felt something. Not grief, just acknowledgement. She'd existed, now she didn't. And Vivian, still in Portland, teaches yoga, has a small life, seems content. Good. Daniel runs a non-profit now, homeless services. He's good at it. I'm glad. Catherine studied me. You really don't care, do you? I care that they're alive and relatively well. Beyond that, I shrugged. They're strangers who share my blood, nothing more. That's sad. No, I said, that's honest. We finished our coffee in silence. When we stood to leave, she hugged me, quick and tight. Be well, Eleanor, she said. You too. I watched her walk away, back to whatever life she'd built after mine had exploded. Then I went home. I lived another 18 years. Quiet, simple years filled with small joys and no regrets. When I died the second time, it was in my sleep. Peaceful, complete, 86 years old. No bridges, no rivers, no desperate need to escape, just rest. And in that final moment, I thought about the girl outside the door. The one who'd waited for them to choose her, the one who'd believed that family meant belonging, that love meant loyalty, that waiting was the same as worth. I hoped she knew now, hoped she understood. You don't wait for people to choose you. You choose yourself, and everything else becomes simple after that. The door is always closed to someone, but you can walk away, build your own door, your own room, your own house. You can build an entire world where you're not waiting in hallways. And that world, the one you build yourself, is the only one that matters. That's what I learned. That's what I'd tell that girl if I could. You are enough. You were always enough. Their failure to see it was never about your worth. Walk away. Build something beautiful. Live twice if you have to. but never, ever wait outside that door again.